Hello everybody. In today's video we're going to be creating a Hydra. And that's not going to be so much in a literal sense in making a mythological creature. It's just the figurative concept of a Hydra is what happens when you cut off one of its heads. Two more grow back. Kill these two. And now we have 4. And we kill those 4. And now we have 8. So basically the principle of what we're going to be going over is how to take 1 unit and make it respawn into 2 units. And the code for that is actually quite simple. So we just take whatever unit that we want to turn into 2 units and set its dead ID to 1644. And then we need 2 other units declared as constants. I call them Annex 1 and Annex 2, and they are going to be set to 1640 and 1644. Doesn't matter which one is which. And then whatever units you want it to spawn into, you just take those units and set their dead ID to whatever unit you want to spawn into. So the militia is ID 74, so I'm taking the militia and I'm spawning it into 2 different militias. Now, I don't have to set it to a militia. I could set these dead IDs to anything I want. If I wanted to turn it in 1 unit into Lancelot and 1 unit into a Cobra Car, there's nothing stopping me from doing that. And that's all well and good, but it's important to know how and why this works in order to see how this kind of modding mechanic fits into the game. So first we need a little bit of a history lesson. So in the beginning, anytime you would start a game on a nomad map, normal civs would start with 3 villagers, Mayans would start with 4, and Chinese would start with 6. Now that first changed in January 2020. So after this point, it was changed so that Mayans and Chinese only get their extra villagers after the TC is built. And that's where we would introduce object 1644. If we take a look at the Advanced Genie editor, 1644 is called Villager Annex for Mayans. So essentially what happens is the Mayans would get this technology that would upgrade object 890 into object number 1644. So what is object 890? So if we look at a town center, object 109, we can see that object 890 is one of the annex units of a town center. So an annex unit is essentially just a unit that is attached to another unit. So this object 890 normally does nothing, but once the Mayans got that unit upgraded to 1644, that actually did something. So if we go back to 1644, we can see that 1644 has an annex unit of 1640. So 1644 annexes 1640, and if we follow the path to 1640, we can see that its dead unit is 1643, and if we go to 1643, we can see the dead unit is a male villager. So that all seems like a pretty complicated way just to, spawn 1 villager from a TC once it's done. And in the context of normal games, it's not even really super significant anymore. Because if, let's go to the Technologies tab, and we will filter by civilization. Mayans are 16, so we'll say C16. Let's check out their bonus 554, which makes them start with 4 villagers. That's this effect, and we can see when we look at this effect, is that what I just stated is upgrading object 890 at object 1644 isn't what's happening. It's just spawning 1 male villager from the town center, and that has been true since January of 2021. So this is the patch when previously when there were multiple town centers, Mayans, Chinese, Incas would get 1 a set of extra vills or llamas per TC, and in this patch that got changed to spawning for only one town center. So that's what this spawn effect is doing. But the good news is, now that this whole process isn't being used to annex extra units for Mayans, it means that these units are available for us to mod without affecting normal gameplay. So, with all that being said, when it comes to thinking of applications for something like this, we can look no further than the video I just made recently, where we took a trade cart and made it spawn into a buffalo. So even though we were able to achieve this effect, what happens to the guy who's driving the cart? If he just has to die, that's not very nice. So maybe we can use this method we now know of annexing units to see if we can spawn both a buffalo and a driver. So currently, we're setting the dead ID of a trade cart to 1142, which is a water buffalo, and I'm going to set it instead to 1644. So 1644 normally doesn't have a dead ID, so if we replace that with a buffalo, a buffalo is 1142, so 1644 is going to be set to, is going to spawn into 1142, and then 1640 usually ends up as a male villager anyway, so maybe we can try to just not set the dead ID of this at all, so it will turn into a male villager anyway. So we have one trade cart, and now we have successfully spawned a buffalo from it, in addition to its driver. But we can see that if we delete this one, now that doesn't work anymore. And that's because, if you notice here, if object 1643 is ever able to spawn, it will initiate this technology, it will initiate this technology to disable all future spawns. So if we go to 640, that has an effect of 679. So as soon as that technology is initiated, it changes 1644's properties into the properties of object 889. So that's why it's important to know how these things work. So I can just cut out this middleman here and set the dead ID of 1640 directly to the male villager so that that technology is never initiated. So bring this line of code back, and the villager constant is 83. So now we have one set of buffalo and villager, and now we have another set of buffalo and villager. And in some cases, it may even be desirable to have the respawning only happen once. So in that case, you would actually want to initiate this technology, but it would always depend on the particular situation. Now, in addition to this, knowing what annex units are and how they work can have different applications also. So let's say, for example, that we were on a nomad map and we wanted to spawn ourselves a scout, but only after the TC was completed. So we can think about things like the Inca llama bonus, because the Incas don't get the llama until the TC is completed. And if we take a look at the effect of that technology, it works the same way the Mayan villagers do now. It just uses the spawn effect, which means the way it used to work, which is upgrading 890 to 1118, and then eventually leading to the dead unit being a llama. Maybe we can try to replace this dead llama with the scout. So what we would have to do in this case is we would have to manually upgrade 890 into 1118. So we have, we'll call this Llama Building 2, and we'll call 1118 Llama Building number 1. And if we said effect amount upgrade unit, we will upgrade the MTTC annex into Llama Building 1, which is essentially the way the Inca bonus used to work, but instead of spawning into a llama, we will change the dead object, set attribute of Llama Building 2 into a scout. So scout cavalry is 448. So we'll set the dead ID to 448. So we can see that we are now building the TC. And once the TC is done, we can see that it spawns us a scout. Now, obviously, that's pretty nice, but we also have to check and make sure that none of these units that we're trying to modify are being used elsewhere in the game. So we already determined that the Incas don't use any of these llama buildings to spawn their llama. They just use the spawn effect. However, there is another bonus that spawns units underneath the town center, and that happens to be the Tatars sheep bonus. So it's not a coincidence that I'm playing as Tatars here, because once the Tatars reach the castle age, they rely on using that MTTC Annex 890 by upgrading it to 1694. So we are playing as Tatars now. So let's try and get ourselves up to the castle age. So we can see when we get ourselves up to the castle age, extra sheep no longer spawn under our town centers because the unit that this bonus is relying on to be present does not exist anymore. With our effects, we have changed 890 into 1118. So now when this bonus is looking to upgrade 890 into 1964, it can't find it anymore. Now, it is kind of unfortunate that we can't mod the unit 890 with impunity, but at the same time, it's helpful to know that this limitation exists so we know how it interacts with the rest of the game. Now, in closing, I will say that there is a lot to be gained by knowing how to read and navigate the game's data file, and there's probably a lot more applications for using Annex Units than what I've just described in this video, but it's all dependent on knowing the game data in order to implement it properly in maps. So I hope you guys have found this video interesting, and that's about it for me for now, so thanks for watching.